So we're joined from Houston, Texas, by my friend, Dr. Nissi Hamilton, founder of Nissi's Network there in the Houston metro area. We thank you so much for taking some time for us today. This is our entrepreneurship class here at Velma Jackson High School. I've got a room full here with me, and we're recording this for all of our friends in Madison County Schools, Madison Central High School, Ridgeland High School, Germantown High School, the Academic Options Center, and our YouTube channel. So thank you so much for being with us today to share your amazing story and talk about the amazing work that you're doing there in Houston.
Oh, thank you so much, Greg. I'm honored to be here. Hey guys, how you guys are doing? I can't see you, but I am just like sending the love. I hope y'all can feel the energy just over the Zoom. So I love you guys.
Awesome. And you are originally from Houston.
I
And
am
we'll
from Houston, Texas.
so Southern just like us. But just give us a little background because your background story has to be heard to be believed. And I've heard it, but I know they haven't. And it's just so incredible. First, I have kids all the time talk about how bad their life is and this
Yeah.
isn't fair, this isn't right. And look, a lot of times they have a point, but every single person is going to face obstacles. And I have never heard somebody, I have very few people that I've heard have had to deal with you had to deal with growing up.
Oh man, you guys, I'm gonna give you guys the 2 minute version of it because I don't want to bore you guys too much. We got 30 minutes and I want you to ask me all the business questions that you want to ask me as you want. Okay, please feel free to ask me anything. I am okay with that. But legitimately, guys, I've been having children since I was 15 years old. And I had aged out of foster care at 14. The judge gave me an opportunity to emancipate from my mother, and I made a decision not to emancipate. And emancipation is just a fancy word for divorce. And at that time, we had revival back in my day. Y'all don't have revival as much as we did. We went to church Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Okay, twice on Sundays because we from the country. But back then it was a huge ordeal to dishonor your mother and father, no matter the condition that they were in. And at that time, my mother was full-time crackhead. Okay, that's just the God's honest truth. She was a full-time prostitute. She prostituted her entire life, not by choice, but by force. Her prostitution started at home in childhood because she was forced to sleep with her stepfather to maintain the stability and the balance of the household. Unfortunately, that's what a lot of African American women did to maintain stability because they didn't get education. If you didn't have an education, you couldn't get a job because you were typically homemakers. You stayed at home, you raised the children and things like that. And you cannot account for perversion because you don't know when you're getting with a perverted person. And the sciences and the psychology that we understand about perversion today, we didn't understand it back then. It was a nomenclature, like it was out of sight, out of mind. You didn't think about things like that. And I could give you a term that we use today still that has everything to do with abuse, but we use it in the legal field. Have you guys ever heard of the rule of thumb or heard someone mention the rule of thumb? Well, the rule of thumb, even though it's a hurtful, colloquialism, it is very, very unfortunate that we still use it. But rule of thumb meant that you as a human being, you as a man, you as a husband. I don't really know how to say it's about people, but I want to say some other stuff. But it meant that you could not beat your wife or your spouse with something that was wider than your thumb. That's what rule of thumb means. But we
I
use
did
it in
not know
court.
that.
Yes. But we use it in court still to this day, and we wonder why we have so many domestic violence situations that have just gone, overlooked for so many years because we still say things like this that is used uh, directly and indirectly in the court of law. And it's unfortunate. So when we use terms like that and we keep that curriculum going for the cultures to come, then what we're really saying is we're still okay with it. We're okay with it. We know what it means, but we're okay with it because we like the way it sounds. And that's how culture works. Culture will force you to legitimize or validate things that are not good and it's not necessary, but you will do it anyways because you like the way it sounds. And that's the way you have to think when it comes down to your business as well. Do you want to do things with integrity, or are you going to continue to do things the way everybody else did it because you like the way it sounds or you like the way it looks? And you're going to be the differentiator between that. And that's what makes good business, when you're able to do things because of your indifference and people want to pay you for it. And so the reason why people pay me It's because of my indifference to not divorce my mother. Unfortunately, I was a victim of sex trafficking at the very age of 15 years old. Now, I didn't start as a sex trafficking victim. It started off with me being sued in the state of Texas for being homeless with a baby. I took my baby to school with me because I didn't account for daycare. And I'm sorry I did that. I take full accountability and responsibility for that. But when you don't have daycare, you think, you know what? I could take my kid to school with me. I mean, I'm not that kind of a mom where I'm going to leave my kid anywhere, even though my mother had did it to me. And at that time, resources wasn't as, abundant as they are today for young girls who are parents or who happen to become mothers early. And because of that restriction, I did not restrict my parenting to abandoning my child. I took my child to school with me. Now, unfortunately for me, that turned into a lawsuit, and it also turned into a cycle, an ugly cycle of adultification. And adultification just means that a legal system or any type of system will force you into um, adult lifestyle, right? Because you're already practicing it, but we're going to make you live up to the standard of the adult lifestyle because of your background, because of the color of your skin, or because sometimes some cultures feel like other cultures can handle the weight or the pressure of that type of debauchery, that type of criminal field, the mindset that goes with that arena. They feel like you can handle it, opposed to them looking at me like I was a child who had just had a child. They treated me like an adult who had a child when I was an adult, and I could not afford to do adult things as far as mitigating the problems that they were asking me to mitigate. And three of those problems was to get a GED, to get stable housing. And I had to get a bank account and put money in it. And the judge didn't care where I got the money from. Now, mind you, I'm 15. I got a baby. What the heck should I do? How can I get money and just put it in a bank account? You can't even get a bank account until you're 18 years old. There's no way you could get stable housing at 18. I mean, at 15 years old, there's everything was working against me. And that you sure enough could not get a GED. Like it was not happening. And so I was offered an opportunity to work in a strip club using another friend's ID. She was 18, but I was a minor. And I made that choice because I wanted to do what the judge told me to do. Even though there was so much risk involved in that, I was so focused on not losing my kid that I knew I could not run the risk of losing my kid and opposed to sacrificing myself. It's already a sacrifice to having children at such a young age. That's why I tell young girls, do not have kids early, because it is a different type of warfare. You have to give up your life when you're having kids. I mean, it is what it is. Time goes on. Her boyfriend's keeping my baby, and one day, I wasn't even a stripper. I was just in a strip club waitressing. I thought this was going to be easy money. I'm going to be able to meet the requirements of the judge. It's going to be all fine. I get to keep my kid. I get to meet the judge's requirement. Everything's good until one day her her boyfriend, baby daddy, her pimp told her, or told me rather, that I couldn't get my kid back unless I gave him $200 a day. And from there, it started a trajectory of not any type of human trafficking, but labor trafficking specifically. Even though I was there on my own as a minor and I was there illegally, when he kidnapped my child and kept my kid from me, forcing me to stay in that lifestyle, he had used the court against me. He used the judicial system. He had used the law enforcement system against. He used every system against me. And that, my friends, is what you call exploitation. Because who was I going to tell? I wasn't going to go tell the judge, hey, this dude's keeping my kid and forcing me to give him $200 a day. The judge was already forcing me to give him money to make sure that I can maintain fiduciary responsibility of my child. So it was already so many different moving parts going on that I was in a pickle. I mean, we're talking about, if you guys ever played chess, this was the epitome of checkmate of exploitation. Okay. And he didn't even have to groom me into doing anything unnecessary, because my hands were already tied. I was tired of being in court. I was being sued by the state of Texas. I do absolutely nothing about the court of law, and I didn't even have an attorney to defend me. And that started my journey into trafficking. Now, because I'm trying to speed this up so we can get to the business part. That one scenario turned into multifaceted scenarios of my trafficking experience from 15 to 21. I've probably been with over 1,500 men because of my trafficking scenario. Back in the day, trafficking was a little bit different. If no protection was used, you made more money. If protection was used, you made less money. So I ended up having children by some of the men who were purchasing me for sex. And that's unfortunate, but that's what happened to me. And that's the other side of human trafficking, because everybody says human trafficking and they think it's sex and labor. Human trafficking is trafficking, right? It is the one and only crime that has everything to do with moving people, but has nothing to do with transportation. Okay, clock
Wow.
that T. Okay, and
Wow.
so what happened was I ended up having children by my Johns, and unfortunately today, I have 8 children as a result of my trafficking experience. And then I also have 3 grandchildren, and I'm 38 years old. So I'm a 38-year-old grandmother and a business owner.
Well, I can tell you, you don't have anything to be ashamed of because you turned that tragedy into an incredible organization there in Houston, Nissi's Network. And like I said before we
Yes.
started recording, so many people have, you see it all the time. You see it online. Well, they need to do this. They need to do this to help people. They need, if we only had this, if we, if somebody would do this, you use that tragedy, as sad as it is, you turned it into something positive where you've started Nisei's Network. You provided all sorts of programs and services in the Houston area, all over Texas. And just talk about some of the initiatives you've done because it can really be looked at in any type of business. Because so much of being a business, whether you're in the nonprofit space or the profit space, is taking that initiative. You can't sit around and wait for things to happen. If you want things to happen in a business, you have to be the one to spearhead it. So talk about some of the initiatives that you started in Nisei's Network.
So the first thing to becoming a successful business owner is always mapping out the problem that you want to solve. And I had so many problems that happened to me personally as a child going into adulthood that I sat down one day and I wrote down every single problem that I had. And I also wrote down every arena that my problem affected, from law enforcement to the judicial sphere to the legislative sphere to the community sphere, all the way down to the parenting sphere. Okay. These are all spheres of governing systems that have so many gaps in them and they overlap that sometimes we don't have time to look at them. But sometimes that is the universe telling you, hey, it's your job to look at this. I created you to look at this and to solve for X. So if you guys have taken that good old algebra, we call it algebra, not algebra. If you took that good old algebra and you get tired of solving for X, I'm telling you, solving for X is the way to start your business. So I had to solve for X, I had to map out what the problem was, and then I had to create a solution for it. And then that solution is where I solved most people issues who were having issues just like me. So when I created Nissi's Network Incorporated, it became a network for solutions for my particular people, survivors of human trafficking. Survivors all over the world have issues with housing, they have issues with food, they have issues with being able to get an education, they have issues with legal systemic issues, right? And writing laws to curate their process. And I kept thinking to myself, why don't we just have a one-stop shop where somebody can go and get a solution for all their needs and they don't have to go a whole bunch of different places? And while I wasn't trying to branch off into creating that housing solution or creating employment solutions, I ended up creating those houses and employment solutions, which turned me into a national brand. And I wasn't trying to do that. Okay. A lot of times, guys, when you start your business, you think you're going to go in there doing one thing. I went in doing one thing. all I, the one thing I was supposed to be doing was creating a network of resources where people could call to get help. That was it. You called
Wow.
me, and I was supposed to point you in the direction you were supposed to go into. Okay, and it turned into a conglomerate, not necessarily overnight, but a lot more faster than most nonprofits. The shelf life of a nonprofit, I mean, it can go 100 years, right? But in the beginning, if your nonprofit doesn't make it in its fifth year, you're done. You're done. And I was like, if I'm going to start a nonprofit, I can't be done in 5 years. I got to make sure, that there's some civility in this, that there's some life. What's the shelf life of this thing going to be? How can we make this expand and grow? And I kept needing more resources. In the interim of needing more resources, there were no more resources. So I ended up being the resource that I was looking for other people. So when it came down to housing, and we have very limited amount of shelters here in Houston that take in survivors of trafficking. Okay, so I'll give you, for instance, we have one huge shelter. They take in survivors. They have maybe 250 beds, but they only leave 8 beds for survivors. And I kept thinking, there's no way there are 8 beds only for survivors. We have over 15,000 victims in Harris County alone, and we're one of the largest counties in the world. I think, as a matter of fact, we're the third largest county in the world, and we only have 8 beds for survivors of trafficking. You gotta be freaking kidding me. So then I thought, well, I'm a survivor and I have children. So if they only have beds for 8 survivors, then what about the survivors who have children? So then I thought, why don't I create a housing scenario for survivors to be able to apply, like to get an apartment to my housing program? I let them in, but they come in with their children. And I treat the apartment like you would a regular apartment. I'm not the landlord. Nissi's network is the landlord, but you still pay rent like you would anywhere else. You just don't have to go through all the qualifying, processes like your background. Do you have the credit and do you have the right type of
Wow.
job to manage that and stuff? And so when I created that system, oh man, it the minute people found out it works, it was over. It
That's
was
incredible.
over because it took away everything that the Airbnb uses as well, because the Airbnb, you don't necessarily do a background check and things like that, but you have to have a credit card on file, things like that, to that nature. But we took the middleman, the processing part of it out. And that right there, when I curated that process and I perfected it, oh, we took over. It was game over. We're like for the Uber of shelters for survivors of trafficking, but who have children, and that was our differentiation.
That's incredible because actually I was listening to the radio this morning and they were talking about the homeless problem in the city of Jackson, and the issue was we have shelters for XYZ, but we don't have places for kids. We don't have places for male children. So there really was a huge problem in that. Now, something else you do I think is cool is your smart bags. So you do a great job you're selling people on the fact that look, we can put good use to this, and you provide supplies to the people in the network. So before we just got back from lunch. Before we went to lunch, they all did their presentations where they had to speak, and they get better and better at this all the time. They don't realize it, but being able to speak and being able to talk and communicate, you're able to get out there and you can show people what you need. You can show people, say, hey, you give to this, here's what's going to happen. Here's going to be the result of your donation, of your time, or of your
Yes.
materials, and you've been able to go out and take the bull by the horns. So obviously, you had the idea, but how do you communicate it and be an effective communicator?
Oh wow. So believe it or not, guys, when I got out of my trafficking scenario, I remember my attorney saying, you know what, you should choose to do something that you've never done before, but something that you really, really want to do. And I kept thinking, what do I want to do, but that I never done before? That was the hardest thing for me to answer. And I'm gonna get to why that's important. And one day I sat down and I thought, everybody's always telling me how funny I am. And so I said, you know what? Why don't I become a comedian? And so I did become a comedian for about 5 years. And I was good at it because it was natural. The things that I was talking about, they were not false stories. Those were all true stories. And so it just resonated so well with people because of my comedy experience. It allowed me to pull in my educational background because I still went to college, guys. I have a bachelor's in technical management with a minor in criminal justice. I have a master's in business administration and human resources management, and I have a master's in accounting. So all of that really, really helped my educational background pulled in with being able to create things that people don't typically find funny, when I'm explaining it, oh, it just made everything so much more easier. And it made people happy to listen to what it was I was talking about because I made difficult situations light. And when you're the type of person that make difficult situations light, or whenever you can make somebody laugh when you're talking about something that you're serious about, laughter makes people remember everything it is that you say. And because I had that unique technique to my repertoire, I was able to use it everywhere it is I go. And it's so unique to me. I mean, I use it at the military, to get away from my trafficker. I ended up enlisting to the military for 8 years. So I served my country for 8 years as
Wow.
a military police officer. I even went to war, which is the funniest thing I ever talk about because people are just like, how in the world did you leave the strip club and go to war at the same time? You guys, I'm telling you, it happens because I did it. I know I did it. And you can actually see my story on the counter trafficking in persons website with the Pentagon right now, honoring that story because it is a solution to the Navy. I actually create solutions for the military to prevent human trafficking in our military, within our military personnel. So being able to communicate all of that at one time and being able to reach so many different people, whether you're military, whether you're civilian, whether you're Republican, whether you're Democrat, no matter the scenario, that is what's going to make you. My market is so niche because it's human trafficking, but because I could talk about so many different arenas of trafficking, right? How is it affecting the market today? How will trafficking affect this political climate today? How will trafficking affect marriages and relationships? How will trafficking affect our corporations? Companies are not in corporate compliance. So another way I figured out to make money doing what it is that I do is corporate compliance is a huge opportunity. Why? Because if you guys are on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, have you guys all seen those running commercials about, hey, have you visited this hotel and have you been trafficked in this hotel or things like that? And they're like, yes, if you have been, we're going to sue somebody for you. That's huge. Why? Because the hospitality industry adopted language for human trafficking after the fact. They didn't adopt it before. Right. And so it left an opportunity for victims who had been trafficked in different hospitalities arenas, such as hotels, restaurants, that particular market. It left a door open for them to be sued because they didn't have the language to protect their citizens in their programming. Okay.
Wow.
And so when you don't do that, it opens the door for lawsuits. Now, if you can be sued for trafficking at hotels and in restaurants, then why couldn't you do it in tech? Why can't you do it in banking? Why can't you do it in schools? So then it opened a door for me to lend my voice for the literature to protect teachers from being trafficked at school, to protect students from being trafficked at school, because the education code and your penal code, which are governing bodies, these are bodies of codes that tell people how they should treat you while you're in their space or while you're in their sphere, their legal sphere. And if those codes don't mention trafficking, then unfortunately it opens the school, or opens the public, or opens, wherever it is, the church, wherever, or someone's home, someone's business, someone's bank. It opens them up for legal pressures because there's no language to defend. If trafficking happens at my place of business, at my place of work, how do we plan on protecting that student? How do we plan on protecting that teacher? How do we pretend on protecting the citizens or the people that we do business with? So I hope that makes sense. I know I'm talking fast. Everybody's like, "What in the
No, that's
crap
fine.
you talking
No, they're
about?"
handing me some questions, and I want to get to them. But one more thing I wanted to talk about is
Yes,
obviously you have a degree in accounting, which is incredible. But one
yes.
thing that I've noticed across all these different types of businesses is a person will say, "Well, I was an expert on XYZ, but I didn't know how to run a business." So, especially if you want to get into the
Mm,
nonprofit space, what are some things that somebody might need to learn or find somebody that can do it in order to not go out of business? Because you can have a great idea, you can have great customer service, but if you can't do the books or you can't handle the taxes, things are going to unravel quickly.
absolutely. So here's the thing with nonprofits, there's not a lot of room for sticky ethics as far as a for-profit business. Not to say that there's room for sticky ethics in for-profit business, but but there's some wiggle room for certain things. if you know what you're doing. I will say this. Having a for-profit is not the place to go and cook books. That's an accounting term, and that's basically where you go and fudge numbers, right? You need to be able to account for every single dollar that you get, every single dollar that you spend, every single dollar, and who you give it to, the date you gave it to them, and what they used it for. And everything is an operating expense. I don't care what it is. It's an operating expense because it's for the operation of the business. You are the business, you become the business. So nonprofits is very, very difficult. Very, very difficult, especially when you start getting adding board members and things like that to that nature. You want a really good nonprofit. You want at least about 12 different board members. I own a nonprofit, but I also sit on the board of a nonprofit that does millions of dollars way more than I do in funding. And the reason why I got on that board is so that I could see some of the practices that that board was doing, that nonprofit was doing, that I'm not doing, so that I can do my nonprofit a whole lot better and things like that. I mean, from your bylaws and those, whatever you write in your bylaws when you start your nonprofit, you have to live up to those bylaws because that is the standard of your company. That your bylaws is the heartbeat of your company. And if you don't obey your bylaws, somebody can sue you. If you do something to somebody outside of your bylaws, either somebody you working for, no, it's not somebody you working for, somebody that's working for you or somebody that's volunteering for you can sue you because you worked outside of the scope of your own bylaws. That's how serious it is. So nonprofit starts with the law up front, opposed to a for-profit. You create the law after you create the business. That's the easiest way I can tell you how it works with nonprofit. Nonprofits is great for, when nonprofits is great for people who know people who have a lot of money. But if you don't know people who have a lot of money and you're not good at telling people where they should put their money at and how they should spend their money, and if you're not good at talking to money, telling money what it should do for you, nonprofit is not the business for you because
Yeah.
it is what it is. It's nonprofit. It's not the business of a nonprofit. Is for you to use other people's money to make other people's life work.
Yeah.
Okay. That's how nonprofit is. Whereas for profit is for you to make other people's money so that their money can work for you personally.
Yeah, and
So
you've seen a lot of things in the news about that. There was the big controversy with the Black Lives Matter, where millions of dollars all of a sudden were spent on something else that they were getting donated. And look, obviously we all can agree they had a great platform, but when you're lying about how you're using the money, it doesn't matter what your platform is. So that is
absolutely.
a great point. Now I do have some questions here. I'll get to as many of these
Yeah.
as I can. I like this first one. This is Shanaria Lewis. She's in
Hey,
10th grade.
Shania.
She has a great concept for a home health agency. Um,
Okay.
and she asked, "What is one thing that you're most passionate about and a skill you would like to improve?"
Oh, I'm so glad you asked that question. I was literally in deep thought about what I should do with my second life, right? Because you guys should be counting your lives in quarters, 25, 25, 25. So I'm in the second quarter of my life because I'm 38 years old and I'm trying to figure out what I want to do with it. And I just decided that I think I want to take my education to become a physician assistant. Now, our world is going into a huge need for healthcare professionals. And I'm good at math, I'm good at science, and I kept thinking to myself, you know what? Why not? So I can easily transform what it is I already do in the nonprofit sector and scale up, okay? Skill up, not scale up, skill up, because I'm not selling anyone on anything, not yet. But I can skill up my nonprofit if I become a physician assistant. That would allow me to see victims of sex trafficking as patients.
Yeah,
I can also make my own price for how much you have to pay to go and see the doctor. Okay.
yeah,
So if I say, hey, it's $25 to see me, then it's $25 to see me. As a physician assistant, I can also write prescriptions, things like that. Those things matter to people. Those things matter to me, but it's important to me to build off that skill and to scale up in that arena, because I know that's where we're going to need the most help at. When you're having kids and you got postpartum and things like that, you're going to need support services. And so that would support my nonprofit, but it would also support me as a better leader by being able to serve survivors in that capacity. So I definitely want to grow in that area in the sciences and become a physician assistant.
That's awesome. And physician's assistant is where it's at right now for anybody looking to get in
Yes.
the health field. It's really a great program. This is Chandra Black. She's in 10th grade. Already running her own cosmetology business. Already a hustler.
Clock
That she,
it!
yeah, she's in 10th grade. And she asked, "What are some of the biggest challenges you face as a business owner?"
Ooh, you know what? Letting people go that you thought you could take with you. That's going to be
Oh,
your biggest challenge. It's going to be some people, baby, that you thought, you know, girl, I can stick on the braids, and girl, you can do the sew ins, and girl, you can do the color. And then when your vision and your idea become too big for some people, it creates envy and jealousy in them. And it's not so much as the idea is too big, it's just sometimes people people not prepared for that type of growth right away because they don't see themselves in that position. And instead of just saying, girl, your vision's so big, I believe in you, but I don't believe in myself enough to be able to do that, they'll make you hate your idea. They'll make you walk away from something that you truly want to do because they're not ready. And sometimes you can be so connected to your friend, whether that's divinely or whether that's just, impersonal communication or into personal communication. You'll start to think that, oh, well, your friend's indecision about not being able to follow through with their ideas become your indecision to not follow through with your ideas. You'll start thinking, well, if Shaniqua can't, if she ain't gonna do it, it's too big. Maybe it's too big. Maybe I'm thinking out loud too much. Maybe this too much for me. Maybe I should dial back. Maybe and you start minimizing your vision because somebody else minimized their vision for their personal selves. So then you have to step back and say, you know what, sis, you know what, you real good at braids, and I sure could use you. When you need a job, holler at me. But right now, I got to go own this shop, boo. I see you when I see you. Peace. Okay. You got to deuce out on some folks. Baby, I got some people that did not believe in my nonprofit till I started getting $50,000 checks. Okay. I did a speech. I teach motivational speaking. I had 8 minutes to speak on a platform in Dallas, Texas. And in 8 minutes, I raised $560,000. The day
man.
I did that, I said, you know what? I'm not charging $2,500 to speak no more. I want 10% from now on for whatever it is I raise. And if you can't give me 10%, then the starting fee is $25,000 to even bring me in. So don't call me unless you got the money, or unless you got the money in the room, because I know what I'm doing. And I know how to handle my audience. I understand my audience. Okay. And so if you're that sure of yourself in the 10th grade, baby, be sure to let people go who can go with you, okay? Because people, there are people that wealthy people are planning for 3 generations, but some of your friends only got plans for tomorrow.
Wow.
You got plans for yesteryear, okay? Baby, keep going. Keep going. Don't stop your jet plane to fix nobody's flat tire.
Wow. And that's so cool about what you said about confidence. So the biggest obstacle that these kids have is just being confident. And I do have time for one more question, but you can't help where you're born, you can't help who your parents are, but you can control your attitude and you can control your effort. It is amazing what you can do when you take control of that. But I do have time for one more. This is Jameer Mayfield. He's in 11th grade. He's a member of our
Hey,
band,
Jameer.
and he has a concept for barbecue. And he asked, "What is the overall mission of Nisi's network?"
The overall mission of Nissi's Network is to connect people to resources. That's the overall mission. And if I can't personally find that resource for you, then I'm bold enough to create that resource because I don't like to turn anybody away from Nissi's network being a resource or being a connector for you for the help that you so desire and need to get away.
Love it. Well, we're almost out of time, and we thank you so much for joining us. We got to have you back in the spring to speak to our seniors, but a couple things before we go. First of all, NissisNetworkInc.com is the
Mhm.
website. All of your social media is on there, all the great things you're doing. And I encourage everybody in the Houston area, you're always looking for volunteers for people that need
Yes.
community service. I'm going to get you in contact with my teacher friends in the Houston area. Really can be a great resume builder. And, as we wrap up, as we get ready to get into Thanksgiving season, I
Yes.
think it's important for people to understand how good you really have it sometimes. And
Yeah.
look, I'm just as guilty as anybody, complaining about things. And look, I just said it. You can't help who your parents are. You can't help the talents you're given. You can't help what color you are. You can't help the circumstances you're born in. But there is so much that you can control. And whether if you want to be an entrepreneur or not. And because these kids are about to be making some major decisions for their life when it comes to
Yeah.
what they want to do after high school, and we're going to support them and all that. But at the end of the day, they're going to have to be the ones to take control. So, as somebody that has faced unsurmountable, seemingly under unsurmountable odds, and just become one of the most successful people we've had on this platform, what can they do to make those right decisions when they're faced with it when they're 18, 19, 20 years old?
I'm going to tell you guys something that I tell my children every single day. You are born looking like your mother and your father, but you're going to die looking like your decisions.
Wow.
And you need to make sure that your decision is unto death, whatever it is you do. And if you indecisive, that means you need to seek counsel or you need to seek wisdom from somebody who's been where you're trying to go, or find that person who's where you want to be and get mentorship. Okay. I have a lot of mentors. Coach Carter, the real Coach Carter, not Samuel L. Jackson, love him to death. Thank you for playing my mentor. That's one of my mentors. He called
Awesome.
me all the time and he talks to me about my speech the same way he would train somebody with basketball. Okay. He said, every time you talking to somebody, did they learn something from you? What will they take away from meeting you? And will that person want to meet you again? And those are things that I think about every single day. Will you guys want to meet me again in real life one day? Or did I make you guys feel like, oh, you got to have the money to be successful? No, sometimes when you're running a business, it cannot always be about the money. Sometimes it's about the command and presence, and the money will come. You guys, I create laws and I legislate in other countries.
That's awesome.
Baby, money can't buy that type of power. Do you understand me? I can go fly somewhere right now, and the honor that is bestowed upon me because of the type of problems that I solve and the criminal activity that gets dissolved because I'm somewhere, that's a type of power that money cannot buy. So you have to figure out what is going to be your justifying reason. So when you leave this earth, people know your why.
Wow. Well, we thank you so much for taking some time for us in your busy schedule. We'll definitely have to do this again. And again, I encourage everybody check out NissisNetworkInc.com. So many great resources, great content. All your social medias are there. And we thank you so much for joining us all the way from Houston, Texas. Dr. Nissi Hamilton, founder of Nissi's Network. Thank you so much for taking some time for us today.
You're so welcome, Greg. Thank you, students, so much. And if you have any more questions, please send them to your teacher. He will email me. He knows how to find me. I would love to keep in touch with you guys. Please follow me on Facebook. Nissi Hamilton is simple Nissi Hamilton. I ain't got all that cute hashtag stuff. Okay. I love y'all. And I got a little Facebook page. So I'm not a Facebook, sorry, a YouTube page. So I'm really trying. If you would please go hit the subscribe button so I can put some more content on there and kind of grow it out. So thank you guys so much.
I talk to you soon, my friend.
All right. Thanks, Greg.
See you.